Good afternoon. Welcome to Norton's Midyear forecast for 2023. We're so glad you could join us this afternoon. We have a lot of information to share, and we're looking forward to having a great conversation with two of our top experts in the industry who I wanted to introduce real quick. And first, I wanted to start with Cammie Crawford, who's been in the business for 28 years. She's a partner with the Norton Agency, has been with our firm for 6 years. So quite a long time, and it's been a ride.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yes.
It's been great. So we're so thankful to have Cammie here and her expertise. She is located in our Brazelton office and works a lot of the 85 corridor, Jackson County, Gwinnett County. So if you need any expertise in that area, Cammie is here to help. Secondly, also wanted to introduce Brad Abernathy, also been in the business for 28 years. Again, lots of expertise and also a partner with Norton Residential. You are doing a lot of high-end inventory here in Gainesville and Hall County. Of course, I think your group, the Abernathy Cochran group, will do just about anything around North Georgia. So any of your needs, Brad would be glad to help you with that. So we do appreciate the two of them and their expertise, and we'll talk to them in just a few minutes, but I want to do a few housekeeping items. Just let you know that any of this information that you see today, you can find at nortonintelligence.com. So if you'd like to follow up and get some of the information or go back and look at the video, it will also be posted on our YouTube channel. So you're welcome to find it again there if you missed something, and feel free to reuse it as you see needed. On January 25th, please join us for our annual forecast at the Ramsey Center at Lanier Tech. We look forward to you joining us in live. With that said, also wanted to share a few things that are happening in the market before we jump into our questions with our panel. Also wanted to remind you, if you would like to ask a question during the interview, please do so in our chat box. That will be the way for you to communicate with us, and we'll be happy to answer those questions through the chat box as you ask. So please keep that in mind as we go through our presentation. So first, I'd like to start off with a few things happening in North Georgia. I want to share a few charts with you to give you an idea of where we are. Obviously, real estate's a big topic these days, and people want to know what's happening. And so we just want to give you some real-time data on what's happening in the market. First chart that I'm going to show you is the North Georgia inventory by price point. Really what I want you to pay attention to is really the fact that our inventory is starting to increase. If you look back at September, October of 22, we really had our peak of inventory, started to decline in early 23 and is now increasing back in July of 23. But the biggest thing to look at is really price point. What we're seeing is a price disparity that's happening throughout North Georgia. Houses in the $250,000 range and under is disappearing, is going away. So we are finding that it's very difficult to find affordable housing or available housing, attainable housing under that $250,000 price point. And so where we're seeing a lot of the sweet spot or opportunity is 450 to about 750 seems to be where most of the inventory lies and where most of our sales volume is. If you look by sales by price point, you'll see a very similar thing. Again, the trend is disappearing for the low end of the market. Again, we're starting to see some of an increase back for May and June of 23. Our peak was back in April and May of 22, and obviously a downfall in the beginning of 23, but now we're seeing an increase. Really getting back to a little bit of a normal market. So we've actually, for the Norton Agency in June over June, we actually have increased by about 5%. So we're happy to see a slight increase in sales volume for our company over this 6-month period, and looking forward to that trend continuing. Also want to give you kind of months of inventory, just so you understand months of inventory. An average month or a good inventory would be about 5 to 6 months of supply. Currently throughout North Georgia, we're in a 2-month supply. So we have very limited supply, and we see that across all price points across North Georgia. If I were to show you all of the counties across North Georgia, you would see very similar trends for each county. Next, average days on market goes right along with those months of inventory. This is basically how long it takes to go from putting on the market to getting to contract. And right now we're at about 34 days. Our peak was back in February of 23 at 54 days. So again, we're starting to see things, the velocity of sales picking up, which is a good sign to see that there's still folks out there purchasing properties. And then gives you an idea if you just compare the sales volume to months of supply. As you can see, the volume is continuing to come down some as inventory continues to diminish, but we are starting to see the months of supply slowly creep up. So that is some good indicators of what's happening in the market. And then lastly, we'll take all three and put them together for North Georgia quick indicators. And again, as you can see, the 250 to 450 range, and then above, it seems to be the biggest inventories they have and the lowest supplies. As you get into the higher markets for 750 up, it's about a 6-month supply, so which is actually low on the high-end market. So again, very low inventories across all price points. So with that, appreciate you listening to our charts, but I wanted to share now some information from our experts, and we have some questions, and we're just going to have a real good, quick conversation about what's happening in the market. And Cammie and Brad, Cammie, I'll start with you, and I'll throw these questions out to both of you, so please feel free to chime in. But as you just heard me talking about, inventory is a big topic right now. And obviously, we're seeing those inventories diminish throughout North Georgia. So, how do you think that's affecting the market? And this follow-up question is, where we are seeing some standing inventory, and why is that? But let us know, what about inventory?
Inventory is low, and it is having an effect on the market. I think it continues to keep our pricing high at a higher amount. We've had a slight decrease in price, but not maybe 2%, So the low inventory has a big impact on that and the buyers. There are some that are still sitting on the market, but I believe that's because they're priced too high to begin with.
Okay.
Buyers are getting more selective. We're not seeing the Wild West we saw last year, where buyers were just throwing money and buying everything.
Yeah.
They're being
on
a little
the market
bit more
for 72 hours and 35 offers later. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And even though the pricing is still at a higher rate, I think sellers, those that are still wanting to price theirs even higher, thinking they'll get it, are sorry that they did that. And I think it lets it sit on the market.
And starting to adjust, you think some? Absolutely, yeah. Brad, how about you? What are your thoughts on inventory?
Well, I think, in the Gainesville market, and the Hall County, the greater Gainesville market, I guess, is what was just named the #1 real estate market in the country.
World would be nice. I know.
You could say the world.
Yeah.
The #1 real estate market in the country, and they did that, various different things where they ranked it, and we ranked almost last or near last in active listings for sale.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. A lot of people are moving here. They found us. They're moving to this area, in this northeast Georgia area, and they can't find the houses for sale. So we have a lot more demand for them than we normally did, and that's made the prices increase significantly. But I think in any market, there's always going to be a few houses that weren't taken care of that are never going to sell very well. And so those sellers have also raised their prices too, along with everybody else, and they're still not selling. That's just the way it's going to be when you said about, that about the market. But, as far as inventory goes, you said 250 and under. I track a lot of things that are 300 and under, and I know that in the Hall County market, just a short 5 years ago, 68% of all our homes were sold under 300,000, and now we really don't have that inventory. And
that's throughout North Georgia. Yeah, I mean, that's not
figure out the solution to that, but it'll come soon.
Yeah.
There are. You made a good point. You mentioned people coming to the North Georgia market. I know that we saw from 2010 to 2020, according to the census, state of Georgia increased by 1.1 million people. That was the third highest number of population, just behind Texas and Florida. So obviously, and then a lot of people coming here. In the article you mentioned, talk about a lot of our population growth and the desirability of North Georgia. Describe that for me. What is that?
Well, I think that obviously we're biased. We live here, but why wouldn't they? We have every single thing that anybody could want. We have the environment. We have the 4 seasons. We have medical. We have employment for all ages and all different education levels, and you have the lakes and the mountains and the college towns that are around us, and professional sports. There's, we can be, either one of us, three of us can be in Hartsfield International Airport in an hour and fly anywhere in the world nonstop. I mean, why wouldn't they come here? And so I think that's what people have realized in the last few years. They've become more mobile, and they're moving with their jobs. They're working from home more, so why not relocate to one of the best places in the world to call home?
Absolutely, absolutely. Cammie, we talk about inventories. One of the biggest questions we always get asked is about new construction. Why is that? Why are we not keeping up with the demand? You're currently working in a new home subdivision that seems to be having lots of success. How do you see builders reacting to this inventory issue, and are they fulfilling the need, or are they just keeping up with what they can do?
Any new inventory that's added is a good thing, but I think builders are being a little cautious and not overbuilding, and so they're limiting the amount they're putting out there at one time. So yeah, I don't think they're keeping up with the demand that's there.
Just limiting their exposure on how much they put out there. Yeah, I think I've seen that trend as well.
Cost is a lot more to build now for new construction, than it has been for a long time. So there's a lot on the line for that, and I think they're being a little cautious.
So how is that? So the effect of how the building materials, labor cost, all that seems to be affecting their challenges. Supply chain issues that we saw during COVID. Are we still seeing lingering effects from that?
Yeah. Once the price goes up, you don't see it go back down as far as the materials and the labor. Municipality cost has a huge impact. And then the cost of the land too. Development cost has gone up. So, for a builder to build now costs a lot more. And of course, that's relayed over to the home buyer. Mm-hmm.
Brad, you deal with a new home builder as well. They do a lot of virtual building before they actually. How is that going? Are you still seeing? And that's a kind of a high-end market. A lot of opportunity there.
Well, it is, but even they are looking at the different market segments that need housing, and none of our builders out there right now are really building for half the population that wants to be in a more affordable home, and I think that's because I think there's a change coming. I really do. I was talking to somebody earlier, and the average size for a home in this country is like over 2,200 square feet. And most people live in apartments. The average size of apartments in this country is 880 square feet, which is the same size as the average home in the United Kingdom. So, we have one of the biggest homes in the world as far as average size. And I think that we don't need that much space. When my wife and I are at our beach place, we're in half the square footage that we are at our home, and we are just happy. I think houses have gotten too big, and we need to make them smaller. I think we'll all be happier when they're smaller. We can afford them better. We can build more for people. And when prices are $300 a square foot to build right now, or more, building a 1,200 square foot home is a lot better than trying to build a 3,500 square foot home.
And we are seeing that trend. I think a lot of builders are recognizing that. And do you think they're changing the type of homes they're building? For instance, maybe the materials maybe are a little more affordable. They maybe do shrink the footprint. Maybe it's a crawl, or it's a slab versus a crawl. Are you seeing some modifications to construction in that standpoint?
I think so. I mean, we've always tracked the greatest generation, this baby boomer and this greatest generation ahead of us, and what are they doing? They're living in senior living right now, which are smaller places. There's RV dealerships on every corner in the country, so people are buying RVs and traveling the country. And I looked that up, and the RV average size is 260 to 360 square feet. And people are being mobile, and they're moving, and we don't need the big houses anymore, and we can solve a lot of problems if we're building 800, 900 square foot homes that are great, that are fantastic. And so, yes, there's some modifications needed. There's high-tech places that are building prefab homes that are being shipped and put together. That's different from what it used to be like, where people would have a mobile home and counties would outlaw them or whatever. But I think we have to look at housing in a different way.
So you mentioned a minute ago you were talking about home ownership in the United States, and I know in year 2000 we had 69% home ownership in the U.S. Obviously, that's been the American dream, is to own a home. Today we're tracking at about 64%, so that's about a 5% decrease over that. Now you might say, well, that's 20 plus years, but that's a substantial number when you do look at that. And we are as we see these inventories shrink on housing, and we obviously see the increase of apartments. You just mentioned, square footage. Well, your average apartment's what, 800, 900, 1,000 square feet. That's becoming a more of a norm for a lot of folks to live in these apartments, which they're still paying, substantial rents, which are even more than the mortgage. So is that a trend that you think we'll continue to see?
Well, it's more than the mortgage because there aren't houses for them to buy. Yeah. There aren't the houses for them to buy. And I think that the trend right now is less home ownership because people can't afford them. Yeah. And so what we don't want to do is build a society. I told somebody the other day, we don't want to build a society where everybody in the urban center of a small town that wants to live downtown has to rent. And you don't want all the home ownership in the downtown areas to be owned by corporations or that own apartments. And I think that's what happened a few years ago is corporations pulled their money out of the stock market and started buying up houses all over the country to rent them.
Right.
And so we've got to combat that by building smaller homes.
Yeah, and I'll say there are still, with that said though, I do know that there's a lot of these investment groups that have bought houses. There's still a very small portion of the market, even though that is a challenge because they are competition for those people that are first-time home buyers or second home. It doesn't matter, but right. They're anybody that's trying to buy a house has to compete with that all-cash buyer, which can be a challenge.
We're all great people. If we're an investor or we're on trying to find a house for a young couple. Yeah. We're all the same. We have clients that are investors. We have clients that want to be future homeowners. So we have to balance that. Yeah. I've always been sort of more pro homeowner and try to, when I have all these people that want to buy a home, try to find them one. Try to find them the perfect place. And it's hard to do right now.
Yeah. And I think there are some opportunities to combat that through some of our local municipalities, some initiatives, maybe even through the state. So hopefully we'll see some of those things in the future. Cammie, we were just talking about a minute ago, really the prices are still remaining high. Are we, and you said in some cases people are overpricing. Do you still see though that people are getting a high percentage of their original list price versus the sales price? Is there still high? Or
not as the norm as we did, but I am still seeing it depending on the area that the property's in and if it's priced right to begin with. If it's priced right and you get a buyer that comes in there, then if it's the first one in, they want to make a high offer to make sure you look at theirs and not wait. But if they don't and you get multiple offers in, then that's driving the price up too. So I'm still seeing it, just not as often.
Okay. Brad, how about you?
We see it.
Yeah.
In certain price ranges. We only have about 6% of our homes over $750. Only 6% of the homes that sell in this county are over $750. So we don't see it a lot in the higher end prices, but we do see it a lot with competitive prices.
And I like to remind people, you get 98% of you're still doing pretty good for your, list price versus the.
Oh, it's back up now. It went up to 102% average for our county, and then it dropped to 97% about 5 months ago, and it's on the rise now. It's back up to 99%. This is the list price sales price ratio.
Yeah. Cammie, obviously a hot topic right now, and a lot of people are watching this very carefully, is interest rates. Obviously, that's affecting kind of what people do, what they're doing, and what they're not doing. Do you feel like you have a lot of customers and clients waiting to see that trend change?
I feel like there's a lot that's on pause right now. To wait to see if the rates are going to drop. Yeah. Historically over time, there's still a great rate. And you still have that opportunity that's there. And there are still advantages, even though you're paying higher interest rates, you still get the tax advantages from it. But it's hard sometimes, especially with the affordability of the housing, for them to be able to qualify. Buyers that could qualify for $400,000 last year now are having to look below that number because of the rate increase. And in Gwinnett, there's nothing under 400. It's tough.
Yeah, I think Forsyth County's average price point is $650,000. So that's pretty grim.
Yeah.
From that standpoint. What about so what we've seen with interest rates is that we took a 20-year average. And we looked at the interest rates, and we actually came up with about a 7.5%. Today we're roughly around 7%. So if you look at it historically, we're actually kind of more in a normal market. We all know, you guys been in the business long enough, you saw people with 10, 12, 13% interest rates. 1980, it was a 18% interest rate. So
We weren't in the business.
yeah, I wasn't either. I think I was 8 years old. So
It's been a long time.
yeah, but looking at it historically, I think consumers may get used to that new norm to say, okay, because eventually it's, I want to own a home. I want to buy a home. I'm going to figure it out, if the interest rates stay high or if they even come down a little bit, which I hope and think that they will. But I don't believe they'll come down to these historically low numbers that we saw at 2.5% and 3%. And I think one of the challenges, too, is that 40% of the people that have a mortgage today are sitting on an interest rate under 4%. So the motivation to sell is a big challenge, because why would you want to go from such a low interest rate to such a much higher interest rate, even though relatively speaking, but I think it has become that new norm that people are used to. And so it's just understanding the market as we move forward, and it may not get back down to those numbers, but a 5.5% may move the needle. Brad, your thoughts?
Well, I was trying to jump in there a second. I think that only affects people if they're doing a lateral move right next door. It may not make sense to sell with the low rate that they've got and pay the higher price, but almost everybody around is doing something different. They're going to move a little bit bigger, or buy something that has a place for their mother-in-law or father-in-law, or they're buying a place that's smaller, or different locations. So if you do all that, it's a fantastic time to do it, and you shouldn't let interest rates be the only thing that holds you back. For 28 years, we've been doing this, and people would just buy with the interest rate, and they would hope that if it dropped to 1.5 one day, they'd refinance, and that's what people are going to have to do again. Nobody thought about refinancing in the last several years, and so we're never going to get those rates again. People that waited that I was working with wish they hadn't, because they either lost the house that they really wanted, or the rates went a little bit higher. So I think, over my career, the rates that are out there right now are better than the average of my career. So
absolutely, no question. You mentioned something I wanted to come back to is generational housing. You mentioned having the in-law suite or the second home, but do we see that trend continuing, where parents, grandparents, grandchildren all living under the same roof? I know, I think it's in Japan, you can get a 50-year mortgage. We haven't seen those kinds of things here, but they look at long-term generational housing. We hear all those stories about the 25-year-old living in the parents' basement, comes back from college, still looking for a job and can't afford a home to live in. Is that a trend we'll continue to see?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a necessity, because of the affordable housing, and we've got our kids that can't afford to buy, and the people that are renting and paying that high rent, and they can't save money, for the purchase. So
Amy's product has got this. Tell us about the product.
I'd love to. I'm so glad you asked. Homestead at Hog Mountain is the community that we have the privilege of representing. It's in Gwinnett County. And, we're trying to check all those boxes of the needs that are going on. It's a great neighborhood. It was designed by Tom Lowe. With Civic by Design, and the neighborhood itself was designed more for walkability, the smaller homes. It's more for human scale, and everything, the homes that were designed by the architects were all for that. Even to the light post, we even cut the light post down so it would be lower and more for human scale versus the larger ones. So it's a great, great product. But we do have the option on some of our cottage homes where we have a detached garage, and then the upper level is left unfinished for a future ADU or accessory dwelling unit. So that gives the capability for that homeowner that if we have one that's a college kid, one that's a sister that's moved in, they can go up and finish that as a studio apartment and either have it for family members or they can rent it out and help with the income for the mortgage.
So we're seeing that return too. You mentioned offsetting some of your cost with, a basement apartment or a secondary, residence on the property. I think that's a great way to combat some of this income issues.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the ADUs are is a new solution, for that, whether it's above a garage like we have at Homestead or, a separate dwelling that's out back for, your mother-in-law. I think we're going to see a lot more of that.
Yeah. Brad, you work with Arthur Ruttenberg. They do the design we mentioned earlier. What are they doing to combat or to be a part of this process of their changing ideas?
Well, I think there's a lot of smart technology that we're using in some of those homes. We're also getting back to, the people that came before us, Tommy, were smart. You remember the Murphy beds and stuff like that. A Murphy bed was just a piece of furniture that helped the room become a multi-purpose room. So I've got people that'll say, I need 4 bedrooms. They really don't. They want 2 bedrooms and an office and a room where somebody can stay when they come to visit 3 nights a year. So they really don't need so they need a 2-bedroom, an office, and something that could be used for multi-purpose. So I think we're doing a lot of that with Arthur Ruttenberg too. We're trying to figure out, what rooms can be flexible.
I feel like we've seen some of that with dining rooms. A lot of dining rooms turned into offices during COVID. Secondary, husband and wife at home. One takes the home office, somebody takes the dining room. Are we seeing, and I think these open floor plans and things like that, so putting a lot of these things together to get more use out of your space. And is that some of the designs you've seen with Arthur Ruttenberg?
We do. We see a lot of that open design where your kitchen is entertaining, your living room is entertaining, your dining is all in the same sort of spaces, and where every room's sort of a living room, but different things in them, but not separate. And the dining room was just one of those things that very few people use today.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, Thanksgiving and Christmas, right? And maybe Easter. So, Cammie, you mentioned something a minute ago about the homestead and the walkability. I feel like we have, just looking around in North Georgia, looking at, things like Roswell, Alpharetta, coming now even Gainesville, right? So our downtown center has changed quite a bit. Do you see that trend, Brad? Do you see that changing, or people gravitating towards these small city centers?
I don't think it's changing at all. I think this is the new norm.
Yeah.
I think that people have felt like they went to work, they went home, and they missed that community aspect for their lives. And I think that now people have found it again, and community is a big deal where you can see people and visit and walk downtown and grab a cup of coffee there rather than a drive-through somewhere on your way to the interstate.
Yeah, and we see the neighborhoods around that obviously benefiting from that. People
exploding.
are yes.
Yeah, the biggest sales price per square foot we're getting right now are the little neighborhoods within walking distance of downtown Gainesville.
Yeah.
In our town.
What about in like Gwinnett County or Jackson County?
The same, more so in Gwinnett for the new urbanism revitalization. But even with Homestead, that's one of the most popular things I'm getting from the buyers is they like the way that it's designed with the front porches that face each other in a pocket park area. So it's more of a community feel versus, coming home and going in your garage and then you never see your neighbor.
Yeah.
That with the commercial space that's going to have the restaurants. We've got space that's dedicated for a private school and a church. So in that one community it's being developed so that you can, walk to whatever you need.
Yeah.
I agree with Brad. I think that's going to be our new norm.
So one of the last questions I wanted to ask, and I think this is really a big topic, and we see this all over the news, the national media, is affordability. And that's become a challenge for every community, I think, in the U.S. We're seeing it across the United States where home prices have doubled in price. And I wanted to share real quick a chart with our audience as well to show folks the home buying disparity that we have throughout Georgia. And as you'll see on this chart, if you look at 2012, the median income was about $50,000 in the state of Georgia. Median home price was about $115,000, $120,000, which was a 2.2 multiple, which for a mortgage lender, that's a normal market. That's what they want to see. That's good numbers. 2.5, 3 multiple, that works very well from a mortgage standpoint. But if you fast forward to 2022, throughout the state of Georgia, we're looking at a 5.5 multiple. So you're looking at a median income of roughly around $60,000, but now a median home price of close to $350,000. So that's obviously a big disparity, a big challenge for a lot of people today, is their income just hasn't kept up with the inflation of the home prices. I know that there are a lot of conversations about solutions and how to achieve that. I know that our firm has talked about one of the solutions in working with municipalities is a word a lot of folks don't like, but it's density. And I know that with Homestead, they have some creative ideas to absorb some of that density with some mixed product, also bringing in some estate lots and things like that. Right. Do you see that continuing?
I do, just because of the need of it. The dense area, again, if it's designed correctly, like at Homestead, for instance, the way they've done theirs with a cottage home, and then they've got the detached garage, it's set up and designed to create the courtyards in between. So think of Charleston or some of our older cities, New Orleans, and you walk through there and you're walking through the park and you've got the homes, but yet they have their private space there. The square footage is smaller, and yes, the lots are smaller, but it's still back to that human scale, and it gives that feeling that I think a lot of buyers are looking for. You do have the option to go buy the acre lot and build a big estate home, but from what I'm seeing and the excitement that we have over this particular product, I had one buyer tell me, when we were trying to pick out her paint color for outside, she said, "I don't care what color it is, I just want to live here."
Just want a home. Yeah.
She just wanted to be there, and so that's really exciting.
Yeah.
It's really exciting to see, and I think that's where we're going to have to go. We have to learn how to be more dense, but yet have a good product that's there.
So one of the things, please,
I think that municipalities and governments have just sort of painted everybody with the same paint. And, there's a big difference between a mom and pop builder that's never done anything but just build one house a year, and a sophisticated, technologically sound developer that can do things. I mean, McDonald's and the best restaurant you've ever been to is the same footprint, but one of them serves a lot better than the other. Cars are all the same size, but some are more quality than the other. So I think there's some really smart developers out there that shouldn't be painted with the same density brush when they're trying to do something right.
Oh, absolutely agreed. And I think that's the challenge, is if you look at a lot of building codes and things, it's a blanket coverage for all types of developments. Right. They're not being specific enough. And I think that's one of the ways that they can combat that is giving some leeway to depending on the type of neighborhood that they're creating. Of course, you have to look at infrastructure and water and sewer and all those things, but there are ways to do that to be able to help minimize some of the cost for the developer and the builder, and they can bring a more affordable product to the market. There is a way to do that. I think one of the things too is the affordability is, we mentioned earlier, Georgia's such a great place to be. We have increase in population, wonderful communities. It also attracts business, and we have a lot of major businesses, employers coming to the state of Georgia. Specifically, North Georgia has been very blessed in seeing a lot of the opportunities here. But one of the biggest challenges they have is where does their labor live? Where do those people live? And I think that they're getting more involved. And Brad, are you seeing that with some of the industries getting involved in the housing solutions?
I do. I mean, right now, you mentioned for South County earlier on, for South County, average sales price is like $650,000. So the labor's not living there.
No.
And so I think some of these communities have done themselves a disservice by not allowing a more, balanced approach to housing, and so I think that some of there are some cool things out there. The battery plant bought a big tract of land because they couldn't find places for their people to live, and so they bought this tract of land, and they might be building a village for their workers. Yeah. I don't think it's like set in stone yet, but they might be doing that.
Well, I think the return of the mill village is a real thing. Absolutely. Cammie, your thoughts on that? You're saying that?
Yeah. No, I agree. Again, where are they going to live? And I've seen apartments go up that house a lot of people for the battery place, and it's a struggle. Yeah. For those employees.
Yeah. I think it's going to certainly.
Nobody wants to live in an apartment their whole lives. I mean, they really don't. You said a minute ago, how do you get past this? The thing about owning your own home makes you wealthy. So, people say, God, our taxes went up, but nobody I know that I talked to about the taxes going up said that they would sell for what they were assessed at. So, I mean, that is it's a iffy thing, but owning real estate makes you wealthy, and it can make you a happier person. So, we're trying to get them in there.
Yeah. So with that, you bring up a good point. So I was going to kind of finish on this. So why is it still good to be a homeowner? And why should people buy today? Why is it still, and I do believe it is, why is it still, even with the challenges that we're facing, even with the interest rates, even with the increase in home prices, why is it still good? And I think you just alluded to some of those, but why is it still a good idea to be a homeowner today?
Well, everyone has to have shelter, everyone. And now's the best time to buy. Why give your money to a landlord? If you can afford it, then you need to get in now and develop that wealth.
Yeah, homes won't be any cheaper than they are today, right?
And somebody told us that land will never be cheaper than it is today.
That's right. So, and we've seen that. I think a lot of people are waiting. We get asked all the time about a bubble or a recession. And the interesting thing is everybody I know is waiting on the sidelines with money. So even if that were to happen, I think it gets propped back up because you have all of these investors that will come in to take advantage of those opportunities. So I think I don't think we'll see much of a decrease, if any. And again, I'm predicting about a 5% increase for our state and our region over this year. I don't believe that will be the case across the U.S., but I think in the Southeast and specifically Georgia, we'll continue to see that increase. Brad, your thoughts on why is it still a good time to buy?
Well, I don't necessarily think it's a good time to buy if you're in Detroit or other places. So that's the thing. What we have now is that we're well known in this Northeast Georgia market, and people are coming here. And as long as there are people coming here, when Cammie said a minute ago, somebody's maybe not selling a house as fast as they wanted to, but they can wait just a little bit, another week or two, because we're not just selling houses anymore to people from across town that want to move to that school district. We're selling houses from people from 50 states and internationally, and so it might take an extra few days for that buyer from Oregon to get here, but they're coming, and we're doing a lot of that stuff. I just think we're in a place where even if there is a little bit of a blip in some places in the country, we're not going to see it here because we don't have enough houses to go around. And as long as that's the case, which I think it forever will be here, we're in a great spot. And like Cammie said, prices are never going to go down here. Yeah. Equity is also the highest it's ever been in housing. So you could look at the equity positions of people, even if they lost a job or two or whatever is going on in their life, their equity is so high that they're not going to lose it. So there's not that kind of a economic blip for them. They're just going to have to figure out, they could sell it and make money. Right.
Yep. And we see savings accounts at an all-time high as well. $11 trillion sitting in savings accounts. So a lot of opportunity. Well, guys, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. Certainly appreciate your candidness and sharing your thoughts on what's happening in the market. We certainly appreciate all that you do for us and our company, and then all the things that you do for your customers and clients. And please reach out to Cammie and Brad. I know that they would be happy to help you with your real estate needs, and we certainly appreciate them. And of course, we appreciate you tuning in today. And again, we thank you for all that you've done, and hopefully we've answered your questions during the interview. And if not, we'll send you some emails to respond to those as well. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you soon.